We are well into gathering the puzzle pieces to explore whether the legend of the 10 lost tribes of Israel is a historical fact or a legendary myth, and whether it has any impact on our lives as believers in the Messiah, living in the 21st century. Joseph was no longer mentioned as one of the 12 named tribes of Israel. Instead, his sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, have replaced him. Events unfolded rapidly after Solomon's death. And by 925 BC, Israel was mired in a bloody civil war. And in the end, the two tribes, just two tribes, one in the north, one in the south, became the most dominant. And this is the usual result in a tribal society. These two tribes were so dominant that for all practical purposes, one could say they had absorbed the other 10 Israelite tribes, not including Levi. The tribe of Judah, the one that would one day produce Yeshua of Nazareth, became the master of the south. But in the north, it was the tribe of Ephraim. The ancient nation of Israel had survived as a sovereign and united nation for only a mere 80 years. But then it dissolved into two separate and independent Hebrew kingdoms, Judah in the south, Ephraim in the north. Notice that I called the kingdom in the north Ephraim, even though typically our Bibles will label it as Israel. The historical reality is somewhat different. The northern kingdom only retained the national identity name of Israel for but a few decades after the breakup of the formerly unified nation of Israel that had existed under kings David and Solomon. Over the last several centuries, the name Ephraim, as was the actual name for the northern kingdom, was dropped from our Bibles. And the name Israel was inserted by Bible translators when they were referring to the post-Civil War northern kingdom of the 10 tribes. Unfortunately, what was indeed, in all likelihood, an innocent effort to attain clarity has backfired. And it's wound up causing much confusion because many biblical end times prophecies specifically referred to Ephraim by name, but not Israel per se. Now, one of the prophets Jehovah used to warn Ephraim Israel was Hosea. Now, in the book of Hosea, actually pronounced Hosea, chapter 1, we get a curious story about Hosea being ordered to marry a harlot, a prostitute named Gomer. And Gomer produces 3 children for Hosea. The 3 children that will be born to Hosea are meant to symbolize, or perhaps to give a prophetic illustration, of the 3 stages of judgmental punishments that God would wreak upon the northern kingdom of Ephraim Israel. Child 1, which represents stage 1, is named Yisrael. We say Jezreel, like the Jezreel Valley. And it means El, God, will scatter. El will sow. The next child, stage 2, is named Lo Ruchma, which means no compassion, no mercy. Now the last child, stage 3, was to be named Lo Ami, which means not a people, or better, not my people, and I am not your God. Disaster. And although this was going to be a very long excommunication and exile for these 10 tribes, it would not be permanent. Far into the future, God would have mercy, and he would take them back as his people. How do I know that? Hosea 2:1. Nevertheless, the people of Israel will number as many as the grains of sand by the sea, which cannot be measured or counted, so that the time will come when, instead of being told, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are the children of the living God. Now let's be very clear, because this is key to understanding what you will learn from here forward. This prophecy made by Hosea referred only to the 10 tribes that made up the house of Ephraim, the northern kingdom of Israel. It had nothing to do with the other 2 tribes that together made up the house of Judah, the southern kingdom, a people we today call the Jews. In the 720s BC, the divine shoe finally fell, and the powerful Assyrians, the greatest empire in the world at that time, came against the kingdom of Ephraim, Israel, in a series of attacks over about a 10-year time span, and they conquered them. Millions of the 10 tribes that made up the Ephraim Israelite kingdom were deported from their own land into the more than 100 vassal nations and kingdoms that had come under Assyrian dominance. This is an event whereby those 10 tribes of Israel became the so-called 10 lost tribes of Israel. The tribes and clans were separated from one another, dispersed, intermixed with scores of the other races and tribes of primarily the Asian, but also the African continents. Now, we were told in 2 Kings 17:6 that some of the tribes of the northern kingdom were taken to a place in Assyria called Halah, another called Havor, and these were near yet another place they were exiled, the Gozan River. And even more, they were deported to cities throughout the area of the Medes. 1 Chronicles 5:26 tells us specifically that the tribes of Gad, Reuben, and half of the tribe of Manasseh, in other words, those tribes that had settled on the east of the Jordan, rather than having entered into the promised land with Joshua, they were taken away to Assyria proper. Conversely, thousands upon thousands of citizens of the various 120 nations of the Assyrian Empire, all Gentiles, of course, were sent to repopulate the land of the former northern kingdom of Ephraim Israel. But in the main, the 10 tribes that formed Ephraim Israel were scattered and dispersed inside the vast Asian continent. There was no genocide upon them. They did not die out. They did not become extinct. They didn't suddenly all become Gentiles. Instead, they rather quickly mixed themselves with the many tribes of other cultures and races of Asia and Africa, to the point that within just a few generations, for the most part, their children and grandchildren didn't even remember that they had a Hebrew heritage. Listen to what the authoritative Encyclopedia Judaica, a Jewish source, says about this. It says, "It is evident that as a rule, they," meaning Ephraim, "did not possess the status of slaves, nor of an oppressed population. These exiles were first settled in Mesopotamia, north of the Euphrates, as land tenants of the king of Assyria. The craftsmen among them were employed in state enterprises. Eventually, some of the exiles achieved economic and social status and even occupied high-ranking positions in the Assyrian government. The striking of roots in Mesopotamian society by a large part of the descendants of the Israelite exiles resulted in their eventual absorption into the foreign milieu. Since the time of this event, of the 10 lost tribes being dispersed into the Gentile world, 27 centuries have passed. There's been a whole lot of mixing going on in this world. I can guarantee you that simply from mathematical probabilities, many likely that are hearing this message have genes from one or more of the tribes of Israel. Now, of course, with the new DNA testing that's going on, many folks, from atheists to Christians, have recently found out that they have distant but undeniable genetic connection to the Hebrew people. But presently, there is no means to prove that same connection specifically to the 10 northern tribes. But what became of Ephraim? The 10 lost tribes of Israel. Was that the end of the 10 tribes? How could it be otherwise? I mean, after all, if you lost, you lost. Yet Ezekiel 37 states that in the latter days, as we stand on the threshold of the end times, the house of Ephraim will rejoin the house of Judah and be under the allegiance of one king forever. How is this possible? With Ephraim having, for the most part, been assimilated into the Gentile world, how can people who don't even know of their Hebrew roots be called back to Israel? Even more, in Revelation 7, we're given a list of 144,000 witnesses for God, and they're all Hebrews. And the 12 tribes of Israel listed as each providing 12,000 members of their tribe to make up the 144,000. So in addition to the 10 lost tribes becoming fused with the Gentile world, which is but historical and biblical fact, seems there must be another and separate element of those 10 lost tribes that did not become absorbed, or at least as absorbed. An element of those 10 tribes who have been stubbornly retaining their Hebrew identities while in exile in various Gentile nations right up to this day. Is that even possible? Wouldn't we have heard about it? Could it be that the 10 tribes of Ephraim still exist, that they know who they are, but they've been hidden in plain sight for over 2,500 years?
For more teachings of real Bible study and to rediscover God's Word with Tom Bradford, visit Torah Class today on the web, streaming TV, or download the Torah Class mobile app.